All right, guys. So here we are. We are gonna dive into do a breakout session. So hopefully you see the demonstration. There is a handout, so I'm gonna flip to that so you guys can see exactly what I mean. Okay. Uh-huh. All right, so this is the handout. So here's example number 1, 2, 3, 4, and we're going to go through each of them. But right now we're looking at the first part of this where we're doing, we're talking about short-term notes payable. Okay, so before diving into example number 1, I want to make sure you recollect the 3 reasons in which or why we would issue a notes issued. We would issue a note, a short-term note. Okay. So with that, I am going to, let's see. All right, so with that, I want to let you guys know the 3 reasons why we made 3 scenarios, if you will, the 3 scenarios why we would issue a short-term note, okay? All right, so our short-term note payable, let's do that. All right, so reason number 1. So the first one is you're simply purchasing merchandise, okay? So it's the purchase of merchandise or inventory, however you want to say it, right? And so what that would look like if I am doing a transaction, it's going to be a debit to inventory of said amount, XXX, and then my credit is going to be to notes payable, okay? All right, so that's scenario number 1. Scenario number 2, the reason why we would issue a short-term notes payable, maybe we're satisfying, to satisfy a previous accounts payable. Now, this is where we will do a swap, okay? So the way this will look is the original entry may have been recorded as maybe a debit to inventory, right, of X amount of dollars, and then a credit to accounts payable. That is what we're very used to seeing. But maybe I didn't pay within the time period, so I'm going to do a swap. I'm going to debit my accounts payable for said amount of dollars and do a credit to notes payable. Okay, so that is scenario number 2. So it originally started like this, but then we did some kind of swap and we promised, we did a promise of interest. Okay, all right, scenario number 3. Oops, can I do? Okay. All right, so scenario number 3 is the one that we're most familiar with, is when we borrow from a bank. Okay, and this one looks like is we're going to do a debit to cash and a credit to notes payable of X amount of dollars. Okay, so that was all 3 scenarios. So make sure you go check that out. All right, so no matter what scenario you have, right? So no matter if it's scenario 1 or 2 or 3, it does not matter. The final transaction will look the same no matter which one you do. Okay, so the final transaction at maturity, meaning whenever this note is due, is going to be a debit to notes payable because you're paying off the loan, also known as principal. Yeah. Your debit is notes payable. You have another debit, which is interest expense. Remember, expenses or debits. And then your credit is going to be cash. Okay. So hopefully that makes sense to you. So now what I thought we could do is now look through a real example from our demonstration. Okay, so that's what we'll do now. So I'm gonna stop sharing my screen. All right, so here we are with example number one, and we are tackling this one, okay? So it says a business issued a 120-day 5% note for 99,000 to a creditor on account. So first off, you need to ask yourself, what scenario am I doing? Is it scenario number one, where I am buying supplies on account? Is it scenario number two, where I'm doing a swap? I previously had an accounts payable and now I'm promising to pay with interest? Or is it scenario number three, am I borrowing from a bank? Okay, so maybe take a second, go through this and see what your answer is, okay? So all right, so hopefully from this, maybe you said it is scenario number two, okay? And the reason why I think it's a scenario number two is because it says that to a creditor on account. So what they probably already have is they have an outstanding accounts payable, but they didn't pay it on time. And so now what they're doing is, instead of it being a regular accounts payable, they are doing it plus interest, okay? So they're saying, they want to journalize the entry at issuance of the note, okay? So what that looks like for us is, we're going to do a swap. So on whatever day this is, they didn't give us day. So we're going to do a debit to accounts payable in the amount of $90,000, and then a credit to notes payable in the amount of $90,000. We have decreased one liability and increased another liability, but we know that notes payable holds more weight because it has interest attached to it, okay? All right, so this is what the note looks like at issuance. So that satisfied A, all right? So now B, it's asking us to now to journalize the entry, the payment of the note at maturity. So remember that when we are talking about maturity, maturity means, right? Maturity means the principal amount, so the principal plus interest, okay? So remember, we know the principal amount. That principal amount is $90,000. What we must calculate and figure out is what is interest, right? So before we can even journalize anything, we need to understand how much is our interest on this $90,000 loan. So to do that, we're going to do the interest formula. And our interest formula is going to be the principal amount, principal times, I may be spelling principal wrong, by the way, but that's okay. You'll get what I'm saying. So you have principal amount times the interest rate times the term of the loan divided by 360, or however many days. So they telling us to assume a 360-day year, all right? So now what we're gonna do is plug all of this in. So I just need a little more space. I'm gonna collapse this a little bit. And so the way we're gonna do this is go ahead and enter it. So you maybe pause it and work through it. So my principal amount is 90,000 times the interest rate, which is 5%, times the term, which is 120 days over 360-day year, okay? So don't forget to do this part first, and make sure you leave this in your calculator. So do 120 days divided by 360. Oops, 120 days divided by 360 days. And you should come up with this 0.33, 3 on and on. Do not take this number out the calculator. Leave it there, okay? Because you're not going to come up with the right answer. So leave that number there and then work this way to figure out the rest, okay? So then I'm going to multiply this times my 5% times my 90,000. And my interest comes out to the amount of $1,500, okay? If you take this out of your calculator, you're gonna go wrong and your answer is not gonna be right. It's not gonna be as clean. So leave it in your calculator. All right, so from here, now we need to do the journal entry. We know how much our interest is and so forth and so on. So let's do that. So here is my my journal entry on maturity date. So it's going to be a debit to my principal amount, which is my notes payable of $90,000. I have another debit of interest expense in the amount of $1,500. Oopsie, not 15,000. That would be nice. But in the amount of $1,500, which we've already calculated from here. And then my credit is going to be to cash, right? And so that is going to be my principal amount plus my interest, and my cash amount that I'm shelling out is $91,500. Okay. And that is how you solve this problem. Okay, so we have effectively answered all both parts of this question. Okay, so if you have a question, let me know. If not, let's keep going. Okay.